Now let's start working on the columns, slabs, walls, and beams. So for those, we will need to double check that they are all classified, and for that we have a schedule. So if you go to the project map and down to your schedules, and double click on the ArchiCAD properties, wall, slabs, columns, and beams. This schedule is listing all the elements that we are meant to be classifying for the sake of this exercise. And that's going to be the beams, columns, slabs, the walls, the roof slab, and the floor slabs. The only exception might be this one, which is the object that does the cut under the steel deck slab on the cantilever. So if you have all the elements classified, all those element types should be part of the exercise now. So let's go back to the 3D view, and let's now go back to the view map and double click on the Kobe 3D view. And once again, let's filter the view only to those elements that we are interested in. So let's bring in, once again, the Find and Select tool. And in this case, we're actually going to filter this in a different way. We're going to go and say we need all the 3D elements, but instead of having a related zone name, we're going to add a classification parameter to this. And what we're going to do now is to say show or display all the elements that are in two branches. So we actually need two versions of the same thing. And these are going to be either on the branch of the product. That's this. Or under the branch of systems. And let's add another one. Or under the branch of elements and functions. So let's test it. Now let's click on plus. And with the right click, let's do a show selection. And that's going to speed up the process of working through this. Now let's save this view under the Kobe setup number 2. And I'm just going to call these components. Notice that that curtain wall might not need to be there, so just going to select them all and exclude them from this view. So let's go up to the classification system and simply unclassify them. Let's click on plus again. Show selection. And let's redefine with current window settings. Good. So now we should have a faster way to work through these few elements. And now let's check some of the properties of these elements. So let's select that wall in there, for example, and let's go all the way down to the list. And let's scroll down so that we can find Kobe component. Kobe component will be the properties that are assigned to the component itself, while Kobe type will be the properties that are assigned to their types. These are assigned within the ArchiCAD properties to every individual instance, but they will be used for the type and the categorization of the different types. That is, types or elements with common values will be brought together into a single type. So for now, let's worry about the Kobe 2 component properties only. And notice how they're all being set to non-applicable or a nonsensical value for the date right there. So Let's go back to the ArchiCAD properties and let's make sure we can populate those, let's say in this case, by exporting to an Excel file, populating the values there and bringing them back. So let's start by checking first the ArchiCAD property manager and then the properties for the components. Right there. You'll see how most of them are set to a single value. Also check the asset type. That'll be important to populate, although it belongs to the type properties. So to populate these, let's go ahead and create a schedule that contains all those components, ArchiCAD properties, and we'll export them. So let's click on OK. And now let's go back to our project map, down to the schedules, and let's create a new schedule where we can actually copy the current schedule we have right there. So we have the ArchiCAD properties ones. Information management. Let's click on duplicate. And we're going to call this Kobe component properties. And then OK. Now, we won't need all of those items. We really just need the uni class. Let's remove this. Let's add the additional fields we'll need, which are essentially the Kobe component. And let's bring in both the UK and the regular one. So all we need to do really is to select the individual properties like so. And so. Let's click on OK now. And then let's double click on that schedule to see it on the screen. The next step will be radically important. Since this is going to be a list of individual elements, it's important for you to unclick merge items and not to show headlines, so that we're creating one record for each instance or component in the file. So we'll have it all in that list, and the list will be composed of all those elements and the properties we have in file. Now let's go and export this. So we're going to go to File, Interoperability, Classifications and Properties, Export Property Values from Schedule. Double check that the schedule to be exported is the one we have created just recently. I'm going to click on Open File after save. And let's keep the name just as the same name as we have right there. So let's click on Save. And this will be the schedule after opening. Okay, so now let's follow a simple exercise as you'll do it in Excel. Let's go and grab just a number of these items and let's start adding values in a sequential manner. For example, I'm going to go and click here where we have the steel beams. I'm going to call these ST beam-001. And then I'm simply going to drag these down to cover only for the steel beams. Like so. So that's going to create somewhat of a tag number that will be individual to all of them. And that can be done much quicker here than inside ArchiCAD. Now let's go here and I'm going to do something similar. CN beam-001. And once again, I'm just going to create a sequential for all these concrete beams. Like so. Let's say there. Let's go ahead and do something similar for the slabs, columns for both steel and concrete. And finally for the walls, for those solid walls and the partitions. You can have some level of freedom as long as you keep a numbering system that is unique for each element. And I'll see you in a bit. All right, so I've got some similar code conventions or name conventions for the walls and the slabs and columns, like so. Now let's go ahead and change the date. Date could be all the same for all of them, let's say, just for the sake of argument, or you can change it a couple of times if you need. So we'll add an installation date. Let's say 2023, December 15th, time, let's say early in the morning, 07, 00, 00. And I'm going to say that that will be copied from this to, let's say, all the carbon steel beams. And let's add just one more copy there. Let's say this is going to be a day later. So on the 16th. And simply add a different group. It really doesn't have to be that precise. Remember that this is purely an exercise just to make sure that we can actually output that information to the IFC file. Let's say something like that. Now let's move ahead and go all the way to the serial number. And this should be an easier one. So in this case, let's start with a number just to make sure that it doesn't avoid the preceding zeros. So let's go with 10 and then 1. And simply drag it down all the way, perhaps there. Make sure that it's continuing the counting. So I'm just going to type in A2. Something like that. Like so. We should have now a sequential serial number for all of those elements. Now that should be fine. If you feel like filling up all the other items, feel free to do that. We won't do that just now. So let's save this. And I'm going to move back to ArchiCAD. And then from here, let's go to File, Interoperability, Classifications and Properties, and Import Property Values into Elements. And click on that and select the file. Like so. And then Open. Notice that some values cannot be affected. Those are the elements on links and other items. So I don't worry about those. Let's click on Import. And OK. So now that the list is in the file and the values have been imported, let's go back to the 3D view. and check the values for that wall. So now you can see the tag number, the serial number, and the installation date. It's always good to double check the IFC values. So a good idea is to always check the IFC project manager and show that selection in this list right here and check the properties right there. So we should be able to see now the COVID component, the asset identifier, which we didn't change, but the installation date, tag number, and so on. Now let's go ahead and check the type properties for those elements.